been out on the water and haven't known exactly what your catch location is? Okay, so with Catch Zone, we automatically pull data from the cell towers and satellite, okay? And we're looking at your location 24/7, okay? Not stalking you, trust me.
I don't know.
We're looking at your location so that way we can pull the data in order to show exactly where you are on a water body, okay? With Catch Zone, we have every water body in Oregon and Washington. You can see the rules, the regulations, the emergency rulings, all from your app, right? You can see what's in season, what's out of season. You can also look at the tides. It's updated every 12 hours, every day, 24 hours, you name it. We're always consistently trying to update it. We got a group of 4 people that are consistently managing and maintaining this app. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not going to take up too much time.
What's it cost?
So we have a 7-day free trial. Okay, just throwing that out there, and then it's $9.99 a month.
What are you doing with that?
Hey, it's better than spending, 20, 30 bucks,
It's basically it's like a Onyx for the water.
It's a spy balloon.
Hey, no. We've
I
heard.
see it. I mean,
Yeah.
you got a pin drop on you.
No, there's no pin drops. So you can pin drop yourself, but we won't pin drop you. It's just drawing that data as soon as you log into it. It's drawing that data.
So what does it tell me?
Rules, regulations, how they're catching the fish, where you're at, if you're going to a new area.
So I'll pass out these cards too, and it says everything on the back of it.
No, I've heard of it, and I think it's pretty cool. It just, how much money?
Pop Off and Big Dave are the ones.
Yeah, it's another $10.
They're the ones who.
I made a photo. Yes. So it's way more than the rules, regulations.
I'll get you can look up.
What was your first?
Blair.
Chris said not.
Did you have Jordan Carnegie down the ocean with any other game?
No.
Who's with somebody a lot like
Probably RJ.
Chris said give it to my grandson.
Okay.
Well, without further ado, this is Blair Johnson, and he's going to teach us how to catch some salmon. Woohoo!
What's up, guys? So I thought right out the gate we would just start with some basics. I've done this here a few times, and we've gone over like rod, reel, basic stuff, and then I thought today we'd get a little bit more into how we're gonna catch them, which is more like where the fish are, what tide. I thought we'd get a little bit more in depth with that because I never have here. We've always just kind of gone over just the basic stuff, and I think that's probably more important. So let's just start with the rod and reel and line. I fish a Kuma, and this is the 1062 heavy. They make an extra heavy, but and we ran the extra heavies for a few years. On my bows, I'll run the 12-foot 3 extra heavy from Akuma. They're called Guide Select Classics. That's only because I'm trying to get gear out way away from my boat, and that 12-foot rod will, if you're trying to run 6 rods, that's a great way to go, because then you're getting stuff away and it holds it out there. If I'm just running 2, 3, 4 rods, I honestly do not believe there's a better 360 rod on the market than this 1062 heavy. And you can put the 9-footers out the back because they're just going straight out the back. But I honestly think that there is a lot to do with how this thing rotates, with how your pole acts to it. And a lot of the 360 rods that are on the market now, all these other manufacturers, their poles were breaking. Everybody, once we went to this 360 deal and we started hanging 16, 20 ounces on them, everybody was breaking rods. And so these guys all went back to the drawing board and just beefed them up all the way through. This, which is not what you want, unless you're not trying to replace a bunch of rods, which is what they're not trying to do. This pole right here doesn't break, and it bends all the way through, okay? it doesn't it's not a broomstick until you get all the way to the tip, and then they put like a light tip on it right there. This thing bends all the way through, which allows your flasher to do what it's supposed to do down there. So I cannot recommend this pole enough to people, because I've ran them all, and I've watched all my buddies ran other ones, and there's something about having the correct rod with these flashers that just gets more bites, okay? So this is the 1062 heavy. On it, I have a Akuma Low Pro cold water, okay? I run these for everything from kokanee to sturgeon to steelhead, whatever it is. I have like 40 of them, and they're on all my rods. They've been unbelievable for me. I don't get any money from Akuma. I just like the fact that I can run them for everything. I don't have to have a salmon set, a kokanee set. These reels are unbelievable, and they're fairly well priced. I think $140 or something gets you one, and then if you break it, you can take it in and get a brand new one.
What size? 300?
This is just the smaller low pro.
The 354.
354. They make like a bigger one, but the bigger one doesn't fit in the my Folby Juniors as well. It will hold a little bit more line, but the only place that I've needed like bigger reels is maybe up above Bonneville if you're in 120 feet of water trying to sturgeon fish, but it holds 150 to 200 yards of a 50-pound braid, you know, so it's quite a bit. This is 50-pound braid. Cameron, a lot of my buddies will run 65. I don't see the point in running 65. I can't break this stuff, this 50, as it is. And when I get hung up in bad spots, in packs full of boats, I want to be able to reach over and grab it and bust it. And 65, it's darn near impossible to do. So I just stick with 50 and I run that for everything. This is the Addicted Enforcer braid, and I love it.
Some good stuff.
It is good stuff. I found these little guys. These are Silver Horde rubber stoppers. I think they're actually hoochie inserts, maybe for the ocean or something, to keep their hoochie full, but they work great for not busting your rod tips out. They're rubber. So I was using Bomac makes a small rubber bead. These are way better, so Silver Horde. And then these line locks are important. You've probably gone 360 fishing for a couple days and came back and all your line is spun up on your reel, okay? This one is a short bus, and there's a VIP, came out with them first. What that does, when your lead slides down right there, it locks that swivel into place. So now when everything is spinning, your bead chains are spinning instead of your line spinning. Okay, very important. This guy right here, very important. Once your braid gets all spun up, it weakens the heck out of it, and you're gonna start losing fish just on mainline breaks. And I go down to a 6-bead, Brad's 6-bead chain swivel, and then on every one of my rods, I snap a duo snap it. You guys can come up and look at this later, but this is just how I do it. It's excessive. It's two bead chains instead of one, but if you get grass on one of them, you still have one spinning. So I like having two, and then when I tie my bumpers up, which is what goes to your flasher right here, I just tie it up on a 6-bead chain, and then I tie a duo snap into it that can snap to your flasher. It depends on what flasher you're running, how big you need on the duo snap. And I tend to just run the bigger duo snaps, so I know I'm good on all, whether it's short bus or Pro Troll. And this bumper is probably with the swivels in it, it's probably 20 inches. 20, 21 inches. If you're just buying the ones over the counter, you can do 24, and then I would buy some 18s, and then maybe your buddy starts with a 24, and you start with an 18. Bumper length's very important on how fast you can go and what thump you're trying to get. If you're in a pack of boats and you don't really get to control your speed, if the pack of boats is going slow, then that would be the time that you pull the 18s out. And that way, this just controls how fast the water gets to this, okay? So if it's longer, it's gonna take more speed and more water to make it rotate. So if I snap an 18-inch bumper on there, it's gonna thump at a slower RPM, okay? So go ahead.
Okay, say you can do whatever you want. There's nobody around you.
Yep.
Is there a particular length that you would stay?
Yep, 21.
Okay.
And I ran the 200-pound tuna cord that you could buy for a couple of years, just the ones that you can buy. And I'm a pretty firm believer in just tying up some of your own on 60-pound big game. It's $10 for 400 yards of it, and you just get your tape out, tie one knot, then tape it, and you'll know about how much line you use on the other one, and make them around 20 to 22. If you're in that ballpark, you can't really go wrong. We've played around with that quite a bit, and that seems to be a pretty good number. And I'm counting swivels. Count your swivels. So you want to be, when it's all said and done, 21. But like I say, 24, 18. If you're just buying them, that's fine. But you just want to have each end of that. And then on here right now, I have it's pretty hard to beat chrome. I run probably 90% chrome, and sometimes I'll mix in a little color, and when I would do that is right away in the morning. Foggy mornings, overcast mornings. It's pretty hard to beat the hallucinator flasher from Short Bus. It's really good for the first couple passes in the morning. It just picks up more light than what chrome will right out of the gate. And then to the business end, this is just...
Go back there.
Huh?
They're coming up with, there's 2 fins or 1 fin.
This is a Pro Troll.
Pro Troll.
So this one, all the Pro Trolls just have one. On the 360s, I think originally out of the gate, he could not do just one. There was a patent because Pro Troll came out with them first.
Okay.
So I think to differentiate himself, he had to do 2 just to not be copying this. And now I believe it's back to he can do whatever he wants. But the one thing is, what I like to do is in my boat, if I'm running these, then I'll just run these, okay? Because they're gonna thump at a different speed. They're gonna catch more water than just the one fin. So if I'm running Pro Trolls, I'm gonna have Pro Trolls on every rod. If I'm running Short Bus, then I'm gonna have Short Bus on every rod. Or you might notice that one rod is just working a little different or a little bit off than the other ones.
Because guys like me, I got 3 different friends jumping in, and they all got their own gear,
Yeah,
and so I'm not set up quite like a guy to push them all the same, because he likes to run lightweight, this guy wants to run heavyweight, and well, what do you do?
yeah. Well,
You have control of what you guys are fishing, because you fish with me.
yeah, I would get some control over that.
You don't have control.
I mean, or at least pay attention to the rod that's going off.
Yeah.
What rod keeps going off, and then maybe put if it's a 16-ounce lead an approach roll that keeps going off, and hey guys, let's snap another one of those on. You know?
Okay.
Do you prefer one over the other?
No. But I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna run them. I'm gonna run all or none. You know, it's gonna be one or the other. Yep. I run all the same on everything, down to a T, from my bumper to the flasher to, you know, like it's gonna be all the same. And if it's not, then it's very hard to start patterning these fish and what we're catching them on. So that's very important in my world, is making sure we're identical, you know.
Do you ever want to drop it off with those, or do you just want?
I will if I'm in 25 feet or less. 25 feet or less. Some of our local fisheries, you know, when the current's burning, they want it down there. And then I'll put some droppers out the back, on my back too, and make sure that they are, you know, when they touch, I'll come up a half and make sure that they're down there.
How long the drop do you usually do it?
12, 14. But fall Chinook, for the most part, you'll see me with no droppers on. If we're talking Bouy 10, if we're talking, you know, most of our fisheries, these fish love to come up, and that's one thing that we've learned from the electronics and the stuff that we have nowadays. When you put it down there with them, like face level or under them, you're almost never going to get bit. You have a better chance of getting bit if it's 5 feet, 10 feet above them. They will come up and check it out.
You want Bouy 10?
Especially at Bouy 10. Yep. And that's one thing that I see that's probably the biggest problem from most lower Columbia River sports fishermen, is we do spring Chinook and we're used to putting a herring on and dragging the bottom, and fall Chinook just could not be further from that. And so we get in the habit of that, we just, you know, we have to get down there, hit the bottom, come up one crank. Well, these fall Chinook are flying. The water's warm, they're aggressive, they're hot. The only thing you can do is be underneath them, really. If you get it, if you just say you're in 50 feet and your gear's running at 40, then you're in there. You know, if you're in 50 feet and you go over one little 3-foot hump and you're dragging the bottom, you're probably too deep. You know, and luckily from the electronics that we have now, all the lives and live scope and everything where we can see all our gear, we know that now, that we need to be above these fish a little bit. On the business end of this thing, a 3.5 spinner for fall Chinook is going to be very hard to beat, and my leader is going to be 28, 29, 30 inches. There's times where you're on a really tough bite that maybe 24 might be better. I almost never mess with my leader length, to be honest. I'll tie him at 28 to 30 with my spinners, and then I'll play with speed. Because that's all you're doing with shortening your leader, is just putting a little bit more action on it. So I might just speed up a little bit if I want them to feel like they need to react. 28 to 30 for fall Chinook is where I'm at. And then we're talking the coast, we're talking Bouy 10. So you have to pay attention to tides. I'm gonna have some bait on. And the deal always was, like, if you're gonna run bait, it's with the triangle flasher, and you need to go slow and just get it where they're at. Now we're understanding I can lengthen this leader out a little bit, 36 to 40 down at Bouy 10, and I can put a herring or an anchovy behind it. Okay? You're not probably going to cut plug one like you would up here. You're probably going to rip the hooks out. So they have helmets that are awesome. They save all your bait. They spin true, and that's an anchovy helmet or a Dick Sure Spin herring helmet. And you have to buy some and match your bait up to the size of the helmet. Really easy with the anchovies, a little bit harder with the herring, with the Dick Sure Spins. But if I am from the Astoria Bridge down, you can probably bet that at least half of my rods have bait on them. And if I am from the Astoria Bridge up, I probably have a lot of spinners on. And it's just a water temp thing. You gotta look at your graph. If you get 68, 65, 62, it's gonna be a bait bite. You're in the ocean water, okay? When you're in that river water, it's gonna be a spinner bite. So luckily I get to run 6 rods. So I'll throw a little bit of everything out there. If you see your graph say, if you're in that mixing water, 65 and less, you better have a herring and an anchovy out there or something. And then leave one of your spinners out. Put a bait out. And all of a sudden the bait's gonna get bit. The bait's gonna get bit. Okay, now run 2, run 3, however many rods you got. Let's get some bait down there, That is one thing that's super effective behind these, and I'll lengthen my leader from 36 or from 28 to 36 to 42. It's not really, they just want the bait, and it needs to be a little bit longer just so you're not damaging your bait. But it's going to be very obvious and it's very easy. Almost everybody down there in that August time frame sells anchovies. Just buy some anchovy helmets and tie a few up, and they'll get bit. Any questions before I
Colors on the helmet.
Huh?
Colors on the helmet.
Yeah, there's multiple.
I like green and then chrome.
Chrome.
Yeah, they make a chrome helmet, and honestly, I've got bit on all of them, but it seems like you can start with like that Kelly green. They make like it's not a chartreuse, it's like a darker green. You can start with one of those, and you can start with the chrome, but those seem to be my 2 favorites down there.
Ever run a spinner blade in front of your bait?
Yeah, I mean, I used to all the time. I used to do just like a 3-hook rig anchovy where I just buried one in the side and one through the snout. I put a spinner blade up above it, but I didn't find that it was better than just a simple helmet. Yeah, and the helmets are so easy. You'll get grass on your spinner blade down there. The 3-hook rig, when your anchovy will get twisted up almost where it looks like a snake, instead of like when you run them in a helmet, you can just get that perfect, almost like the 360 flips. When you're just putting hooks in fish, the middle hook will pull out. I don't know. I just did better, and on my anchovy rigs, I'll just run a couple smaller trebles, like a size 4, but they're going to be like a 3X strong, like a beefy size 4, because when the fish bites it, I don't want it just to feel a bunch of big treble hooks. Plus, you got hard plastic on the helmet. When they bite it, I want it to be mostly fish. So I want my treble hooks to still be smaller, but with all this lead down there, we're going to be like 18s, almost 18s and 20s. With all this lead, you gotta get those treble hooks a little heavier. So I'll go 3X strong. Mustad makes a good one. There's a bunch of them out there, but it's not just going to be your normal size 4, 1X deal. You're gonna flatten your hooks. The other thing we have to talk about is,
I've heard 3X strong.
yeah, heavy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because they're small.
Yeah.
You know, on my spinners, I'll do like a size 1 mustad KVD, and it's just like when you set the two next to each other, it's just a lot bigger, stronger hook. When you start going down into like a size 4 on a treble hook, they really start to get pretty light wired. So you can find them. I just look online. But yeah, 3X is what I use on my anchovy rig. And then 50 pound is going to be the minimum on my leader. 50 pound. If I run 40, it seems like I break fish off. I use 50 pound trilene big game, and then I run 60 pound trilene big game is what I tie my bumpers up with. Couple of reasons I run it: not a lot of memory. So if you go to like a 50 or 60 pound fluorocarbon, you're gonna notice that it really holds the memory. When you wrap it on your leaderboard, you're gonna pull it off there. It's gonna be all kinked up. This stuff seems to be really soft. It's really strong, and it's not an expense thing for me, but it is really cheap as well. But it's just the best that I've found. So I'm 50 to the business end, and then 60 up here. And that's pretty much what I'm going to get them to bite. Spinners, super baits are great. Go ahead.
So if you're fishing a Simon 3 spinner, you change the hooks on that thing?
Yes. I'll just buy.
The blades?
Yep. And then you guys can come look up here, but I have the metal interchangeable clevises, and I usually start in the morning with the color, and then when the sun comes up, I'm switching all of them out. So in the morning I'll start with whites, solid colors, and then when the sun gets high, I'm going to go to metal, Bronco, Mexican hat, some of the popular ones, something with more metal on it. But in the morning, when there's no light, it seems like the solid colors, the white with the pink dot, those ones just hammer them right out of the gate. So I don't want to have 147 leaders tied in my boat, So I can just go pop, switch them out, and these clevises are a lot of people are selling them now, but these ones specifically are from Worth Fishing Tackle, WRTH, and a lot of people are just grabbing them from them and selling them. But before you leave, come look at them. But if you run a leader for 4 days in a row, which I never do, you will see a little mark right there because it's metal. But if you're just running it, for a little time, keep an eye on it. For me, it's way more worth it. Those plastic ones work, and I ran them for years. But you're gonna donate spinner blades to the bottom of the river because they in the net fish thrashes. It's gonna chuck those spinner blades. These metal ones are way better. Any questions on that?
You started to touch on it there, stuffer baits, spinfish, that stuff.
Yeah,
When,
so-
how do you?
So for me, there comes a time in September up here around home where your water temp starts to go from 70 back down to 68, 67, 66. That's when I notice, maybe that's September 15th. That's when I notice that bite really goes off compared to spinners. If I'm in 70 degree water, 68, 69, 70, 71, it's gonna be 3.5 spinners for me. Down at the coast, there's a great time for it because you have brackish mixing water where you can find that 66. And it's not as good as putting a bait on, but if you're stuffing it with tuna, then it is bait, so it might be better than a 3.5 blade.
So colder water, really like bait.
Yep. That's the whole deal, is water temp. I'm constantly watching that.
When's it to your advantage to go to the triangle instead of
I would say springer season when the water's real cold and you're not going to get them to chase. And then at the coast when you have the fish just nailed down, say on an incoming, a huge flood where you're just nosed into it and you know they're all pouring through you at 20 feet. It's easier just to put all your triangles to 20 feet and have them right there and know they're all right there. For me, it's I've just gone so much to these that I run triangles in the spring when I just need to. Sometimes I'm in reverse, trying to slow down and just drag them through the sand. There's one more situation down at Bouy 10 where it's low tide and you get water mixing, so it's starting to come back in, but the bottom is still kind of going out, and you're in 50, 55 feet of water, and you're trying to send a 360 down through two different currents. So it's like all of a sudden it's thumping hard in your hand, and then all of a sudden you get to the bottom and it's going that way. It's like it's easier to send the triangle down in that, because you just don't have the drag. All of a sudden everybody's rod's tangled, Yeah. So usually if that happens to me, I'm not switching all my flashers over. I'm like, you guys can have those fish. I'm gonna go catch these fish because this water sucks, and I'll just go find some better water. But I'll have buddies down there that at least put triangles on their bows and then run 4 360s out the back, and they'll crush them. But that's a 30-minute window where it's really hard to send 360s down to the bottom when you have two currents doing different things. But like I say, usually I'll just go somewhere else. And that's the beautiful thing about 360s down there. You have a lot of water moving around. And guys that have just ran triangles forever, they would be down there and they would just send them down to 30 and not really know what their gear is doing. Now, when I send my 360 down to 30, if it's not thumping, I know that I'm not fishing. And I would have never known that. Maybe my herring was up above, going the wrong direction. We were just wasting our time. Now with these, if I pull into an area where I think the fish are, and I drop my gear down, and my rods are not doing what I want them to do, what I'll probably do right out of the gate is I'll spin around, and I'll just flip my boat around, and I'll drop them back down to 30 and see what they're doing that way. And then if I'm not getting what I want, if it's all mixed up or whatever, I have 3 more spots to check. But that's the beautiful thing about these. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you are not going to get bit. And it is awesome to know that because it saves me so much time. Any more questions on that?
You're monitoring the rod to make sure it's thumping. You can almost tell when that thing's pumping
Perfect.
perfectly like that. That rod's going off.
Yep.
But I'm running that live scope, and you can see you're stretched out with your sinker, with your lead, your flasher, your spinner. You can see all that stuff on the live scope that you got set.
Yep.
And then so you know you're fishing that way too. It's just a
Yeah, and it's like well, it's thumping, but I'm 15 feet off the bottom. Let's go to 40 instead of 30. that's the beautiful thing about it, because sometimes just from your line angle, you would think you're close, and you're not even close.
Right.
You know. And I see a lot of people flying around too fast. Most of the time when I'm out on these crowded fisheries, people are wanting to fly past me, and I can't keep the fish off, you know, if I just had everybody out of my way. But everybody, for some reason, everybody really wants them, like, because I think that that's like just a surefire way that you're going to catch the aggressive ones, but you can catch all of them if you get it going the right. So I think, like, I just think it's a mindset for people where they're picking off the easy ones when they just go fast, and they're not so in tune with exactly where their gear is. And you know, that's just one thing I notice in these crowded fisheries is I just have people flying past me, and I can see their gear going past me on my live, and they're nowhere near the bottom. You know, they're halfway down. So I try to just get a perfect, you know, 1,000, 2 1,000. I try to just get that, and if I can put the gear where I want it when it's doing that, these fish want to bite, you know, and it's going to keep you around those fish longer than flying through there, because a lot of times they're tucked into these certain spots. So if I can hang there and have my gear all working properly, then I'm in that zone longer, you know.
So I'm fairly new at this
Okay.
style of fishing. I feel like my hardest, what I don't know, like the setup I got, but like how fast do I need to troll my bow?
Yep.
And then how much line out do I need to get where I need to be to catch the fish?
Yep.
This is my biggest mystery, I guess, for me.
So those are probably the two most common questions. So one thing that I see is people not using enough lead. Okay? So if I would say if I'm fall Chinook fishing the Columbia River and I'm running this setup, the minimum amount of lead that I should have on is a 16
Up here.
up here.
Okay.
And buoy 10.
All right.
Anywhere that you are 30 feet or deeper.
All right.
And the reason that that's important is because then I know right where my gear is. If I put a 14 or a 12 on, then my gear starts to stretch. And then I have to let more and more and more line out. So if you're looking, you need to know the depth that you're in. You're looking at your graph and you're in 45 feet, okay? A good place to start is 45.
On the line.
Yes.
Okay.
If your line angle is good, if it starts to go like this and it's starting to pull, you know, back, then you need to go down, you know, 50, 55. And one real easy way to do it, usually what I'll do out the back of my boat is I'll grab my rod and I'll just go zzz, 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 and all of a sudden it's gonna go thump, and then I just look down. Okay, I just hit it 56. I'm in 45, okay? And I'll just come up 3 cranks, what's that? 52, okay? Go 50, 52.
Okay.
And then you know you're down there.
All right.
And then the looking at the rod tip is your speed. I can't tell you what speed to go because we have all these different tides.
I see.
So one day you're going to be going 3.5 downhill. You're going to be going pretty quick because it's a big outgoing tide. And then that tide's going to turn around and you're going to be trolling both ways 1.8 because it's basically slacked up. So you have to watch this. What I'm doing with my hand is what my rod's doing with that flasher. It's a thump. You have to see that on your rod tip, and that tells me that I'm going the correct speed. If all of a sudden my rod tip's doing this, it's really cranking, or it's just sitting there. If it's just sitting there, kind of idle and thump every once in a while, and idle and thump, then I got to speed up a little bit.
All right.
Or it's full of grass.
Or if it was thumping perfect and all of a sudden it stops thumping, you need to reel it up. You got a smolt on there, or you got a bunch of grass or something. But that flasher tells you if you're fishing. You'll get a bite. You'll see your rod tips doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then you'll get a bite and be like, okay, that was 2.8, and my rod was doing what I thought it should be doing. Okay, let's make them all do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more
That's with a
questions?
dropper.
Huh?
That's with a dropper that you're hitting bottom at 50 feet.
With or without.
Really?
I'll send it down there. If I know I'm in sand and just a spinner on there, I'll send it down there and hit the bottom and crank it up fast. I don't want it to be down there for long, but it won't hurt anything. And then I know where to set the rest of my gear. But I have an advantage with my electronics. I'll set my bow rods. If we're in 45, I'll go 47, 49, 51, all with the same leads on, all 18s. And then I'll look down at my screen and see where those bow rods are. And if they're 7 feet off, then I know the next ones are 6 and 5 feet off. If I see them way up here, then I'll just say, hey, everybody go down 3 feet, and then I'll watch them drop down.
But you're fishing heavy leads to keep the angle almost vertical,
Yep.
just to control the depth that you're assuming you're hitting the line count.
Yep. It's just.
What
it's-
about your rod position in the hole? You guys run them flat and they hang down the water.
I like them to be just right above the water.
Your rod tip.
I'll adjust it.
It's hanging like that.
Yep. I'll adjust it until it's right above the water. And Scotty or Fulby or whoever makes those
Slip discs.
slip discs where you can crank them down, and then once every day it could be a little different, so I can go over and wrench on them a little bit and just lift them up a hair if they need. But those things are sweet. But I don't like them to be way out of the water.
What difference is it?
That's
I don't know that it makes a huge difference besides that when a fish pulls on it, just like when I'm fighting a fish, I would like it to be low and right on the water. And when you have 3 feet of line out, for me, like with my clients, it seems like there's more of a chance for them to pick it up and slack it up or whatever. When the water is kind of pulling on it too, when it's down by the water, it's just less chance for there to be slack, wind, whatever, And I think if your stuff's, I think of like line angle too when I hook a fish. So when your stuff's already at like a 45, it just seems to over exaggerate it when your pole's out of the water. So when my guys pick the pole up, if it's already up here, then the only thing that they can do is basically slack it up when they go to reel down on the fish. Most of the time I don't have anybody reeling down on the fish, honestly. So if I can have it right down by the water when they pick it up, then it's just a better chance that the line is tight. But that's just, I don't know that it makes a difference, But
As far as catching.
It seems to me they load up a lot nicer when they're down low like that. Because I used to, when I first fished, I put my rods higher. And I saw a lot of the guys putting their rods down lower. And it just seemed like when the rod was lower, your tip was already kind of going down a little bit. It just, the whole thing just seems to load up.
maybe the rod
A
works
little
better
nicer.
with it. It's just, I would just recommend having them on the water.
But that means you're flat. Without the lead on it, it's pretty much flat and horizontal in the rod holder.
Yep.
Then the weight and the gear has got it bent down almost to where it's touching the water.
Yep.
versus like this in the rod holder and you bend,
Yep.
but then you're still 3 feet out.
Yeah. I try to have it darn near horizontal if I can. If I'm running heavier leads, then I might have to prop it up a little bit. The next thing that I wanted to move on to is where the fish are in the water column. And up here, when you get up close to home, it's a fairly safe bet that you can put them down around the bottom. But there are times where that is just absolutely not the case. And one is going to be an incoming tide in the morning. Okay? Incoming tide, the water's slacked up, so you don't have any current. It just means it's slacked up and it's daylight. Okay? Those fish are on the surface. And that's why you look around and everybody thinks that the incoming tide sucks. You know, it's just not placing the fish where we want them to be. But the fish are still there and they're just flying by on the surface. What the current does is it starts hitting them in the face and then it shoves them because they don't want to work their ass off. So it shoves them into these spots where we catch them well on the outgoing, which is the bottom, which is cold water. These cold water spots that we fish where rivers are dumping into the Columbia. And then, oh, there they are. They're on the bottom and they're in the cold water. Weird. When the incoming tide comes and the Columbia starts flooding back up into our tributaries and back up into the river, these fish are just flying. They don't have any reason to stop because they can't feel the cold water because the cold water is all the way back up in our rivers. And it's the same thing down at the coast, even more so. The biggest fish that I've caught in the last 5 years is 44 pounds, and it was 15 feet on the line counter down in front of Chinook. 15 feet on the line counter. It was just a big incoming tide, so everybody's just nosed into it, and the fish are just flushing through you, and you could be in 25 feet, you could be in 85 feet. They're not on the bottom. They're just flushing with the water. So if you have 2 or 3 rods in your boat, you need to put one at 20, one at 30, one at 40 until you get a bite. But that's, and up here in the morning on an incoming tide, I've pulled into a pack of 100 boats and just started doing circles and just absolutely hammering them. And everybody's going, what are you doing? I'm just fishing where the fish are. And everybody else is in 50 feet and they're putting them down to 55. And they have no reason to be down on the bottom. The only reason they're on the bottom is 1, the water's colder down there in the middle of the day. And 2, they're lazy. And with the Columbia River and all these sand humps, when they travel right along the bottom, they get current breaks. But if there's no current already, then there's no reason for them to be down there. So one of my favorite tides is when I know I still have, an hour of incoming and then I'm gonna have slack. Because it's really nice going out there and fishing for fish that nobody else is fishing for. That's nice. So I'll go out there and I'll put them at 18, 20, 22. You don't have to worry about getting hung up. You don't have to worry about, you just get to go out and do circles and putt around and hope you stay out of everybody's way, and you'll just start catching. So that is one of the things that I've learned from now doing this as a career and growing up around here my whole life is just, and what our technology shows us now is just, it was always that the Chinook are deep and the coho are shallow, and that's just what I always heard, and it is just absolutely not true if you get the right situation. And your graph is going to tell you that. If you can, even if you don't have live, if you can just start to learn what a fish looks like on there, and start to trust it, it is paramount that as far as going from just getting a bite or two to starting to really catch them is going to be your electronics, or just days on the water and consecutive days on the water where yesterday at 10 o'clock we got them at 35, we got them at 20, and then the next day, we're starting to get a pattern, they're there again. But I think having your gear around fish is the most important thing. Even more important than your whole entire setup. If you're not around them, you're not going to catch them. Questions on that?
I have a question.
Okay. Bring it.
Well, a couple. In watching the live scope, is there anything you can do when they say you don't like it? Here's an example. I got my gear in place, my live scopes. I'm the only guy on board fishing, so my live scope is looking at my gear.
Right.
And fish comes by, puts the brakes on, comes in from behind it, and is looking it over. And
We don't bite
he
it.
don't bite it, and then he fades it and he fades away.
Yeah.
So are you dropping it back?
Nope.
You playing with it? You reeling up a couple?
No.
Speed up.
No, I've done all that,
Yeah.
and it almost seems to. I used to do that when I first got it. It was like speed up, slow down, what do they want? It's almost like nobody move, keep going the speed that you're going, and just hope that he bites it. But if you see a couple of them come in there and do that, then
Change your bait?
I'll start playing with stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you talking fall fish?
No, this is a couple of weeks back, so it's
Those summer fish are brutal.
But
Those
to
summer
get
fish
looked
are.
at like that, and pretty soon you go, can't watch live scope anymore. You're just looking at your rod waiting, going down, fish, and then it's like they came and they go look at this one, and then back off.
Yeah.
And you can't believe you didn't get the camera. So it's like.
And those
what did you
fish,
do wrong?
those summer fish are so finicky and change day to day. It was like I had the same stuff going on. It was like one day it was super bait. The next day it was like couldn't keep a herring down there. But it was so hard to get any pattern on them. That's pretty common. If I saw it a couple times this summer, I was just mixing. Take a shrimp off, put a shrimp on, put a super bait on. Do you have any herring in the boat? And then all of a sudden they would bite one, and all of them would bite it.
Yeah.
So you're only talking bait, you're not talking the flasher as long as it's in the chain?
It's the business end. It's
just the bait.
yep,
Yeah.
whatever you had behind it. They didn't want, and it seemed like they wanted it the day before, and they might not have wanted it the next day. But those summer fish, our water temps are changing every day pretty rapidly. It's like, I don't know, they're the finickiest Chinook I've ever fished for.
Do you still coach your clients to reach over and crank the reel a couple times, or what's the program?
I will talk to them about that if I'm doing something. If I'm not like hand on the motor, but if I'm hand on the motor, I'm ripping their face off.
So you're setting hook with the kicker.
Yeah, and there's line coming off that reel before they touch it. If I'm busy putting a bait on or something and we start getting bit, they'll crank down on them if I've trained them up enough. But you have to get tension on that fish before you take it out of the holder, because then you pick it up and then you don't have that much tension there. if you don't have it all, if it's not already loaded, you know. So reeling down is a great way. I still have, you know, a lot of my buddies still do it that way. I'll just use the kicker, and I'm usually, you know, staring at all the rods, ready to,
Yeah.
you know.
And everybody else's ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heads on the swivel.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the one thing that I see the most out of people 360 fishing that mess bites up is they've been waiting for that bite all day. All day they've been waiting for that bite. And they get it, and right when that tip starts to bury, they grab it and they're up here. Like hook set, like there is no hook sets in my boat. I tell them I want them to treat that thing like it is a newborn baby coming out of the rod holder. If they don't have to pull back on it at all, then I would rather not have them pull back on it at all. But to get it out of the holder, sometimes it gets sticky, so they pull back a little bit. But I've already got it pinned, so I don't need them to pull back on it. I just need them to pick it up and keep it the tip right where it is and start reeling. Once you go here with that heavy lead, and then you have to reel, the only thing that is happening is that lead is sinking and they're getting slack. There's a lot of stuff down there. If I'm already ripping it with the motor, if they can just pick it up just like it was in the holder and start reeling, that's the least amount of movement, the least amount of slack on our barbless fisheries and all that tackle. It is so hard to keep them on. I just notice anytime that rod even gets, you know, a 45 up in the air, I'll watch all the boats around me. Buddy will grab it. Oh,
Yeah.
he'll fight that flasher all the way to the boat, but there's no fish there, you know. Just pick it up and start reeling. It's just different than what we've ever. It's just different than triangle flasher or dragging a bait of eggs along the bottom of the callets or whatever. We just have so much stuff there.
Yeah, it's a shrine that melts.
Yeah,
And trying to land.
yeah. I don't like breakaways. That's usually a pretty common question. I ran them on half of my boat for a full season. I didn't catch any more fish on the rods that had breakaways on the flashers. I think more importantly, having the correct rod and drag system and just fighting the fish properly is more important than worrying about the flasher. Sometimes I feel like the flasher, when it gets sideways, it keeps a little tension on there for me when the fish gets ahead of, you know, the gear. I don't know. I have a lot of fish come and grab it one time and it comes back up where it would have broke that breakaway, and then all of a sudden his buddy comes in and they get competitive down there. We watch them on our electronics, and if it would have broke that flasher loose, then his buddy wouldn't have been it. So I don't see any benefit in running breakaways on this.
What breakaways were you using?
I ran two different ones. I ran the ones with the magnet, and then I ran one that was the little ball went in.
Like a Connor Day almost.
Yeah.
What brand is that? Cold water?
No, it was like fish something. I don't know. They're all junk in my book.
I'll show you the new one that Cold Water Strong came out with that Ken gave me a whole handful. You guys test them out.
Yeah,
I was against them at first too.
I've ran all Ken stuff. I like Ken. I don't like anything to do with breakaways. I like I said, I don't see a reason to.
You may have touched on this, but do you wait? I know you said you have their rods right at the surface. Do you wait till that fish just buries it before you let your clients even touch the rod?
Yep. I want line coming off the reel.
Okay.
On that note, are you, when you see somebody getting a bite, are you setting the hook with your
Yep.
motor right away?
Yep.
You're
They already know the gig's already
Okay,
up.
all right.
There's no.
Are you seeing that as from the rod, or are you seeing that on your electronics?
no, it's in the
I'll
rod
see it from the rod.
Okay.
Once it starts,
at all.
once I'm.
Then you hit the motor.
Yep.
Okay.
Unless it's a situation where I'm going slow, like with the triangle flasher and bait, you know. But on a 360, when you have plastic or metal, right when they grab it, they know they messed up. So you're.
So you're hitting if you're on the motor, you're hitting
I'm burying. I'm
Okay.
burying that rod. Yep. Just make sure you don't have a boat in front of you.
Yeah. You got a fish on it.
Are you tying a special knot with a heavy leader that you're using 50 pound?
Just a. It's just a uni. The uni knot. It's hard. It's hard to tie, and whatever knot you tie, you have to play around with it and figure out the best way. But this, I was having issues with getting like some curly cues around my knots. But this big game, this trilene big game, just it doesn't seem to like burn when I'm cinching them up, and it's been the most forgiving in that regard. But the uni, that uni knot, I pretty much tie on all my braid. If I'm doing braid, then I'll double loop it through the eye to make sure it's cinching down twice on it. And then on big mono, anything like from 60 to 25, I don't go through twice. And then if I'm doing steelhead and stuff like that, you know, 20 pounds and under, I can go through the eye twice. And that's on all my swivel knots. On my knots, like on my bottom hook, I'm not gonna do, if I'm running a double hook setup, I'm not gonna do an egg loop on my bottom hook because it kinks it. I'm just gonna do a regular, if you wanted to do a fisherman's or whatever knot you want to do where it's straight, I want my bottom hook straight and not, if you do egg loop, then they're both kinked, you know, just how the line goes through the eye. So whatever knot you could tie that just makes it, that bottom hook be straight, you have to do an egg loop on the top hook just to add a nut or a snell or something. But you will get a little kink there, but then that's why I like to use tubing. Is going to help take a little bit of that out. But yeah. And then I don't have a lot above it. I use pretty small beads and just a couple. I'll see guys, you know, with big 6-8 mil beads, 3-4 of them, you know. I just, the tubing gives you a little color, and then for me it's just more distance away from the tip of the hook to make sure that my spinner blade isn't touching it. But I don't need a bunch of beads to do that. I think I have one 6 mil, one 5 mil, and then a little bearing. That's like a little bearing bead, just to make sure it's spinning good. But I think sometimes guys go real gaudy, you know, a lot of stuff on there. And this is meant to be a small presentation, you know. So I feel like less is more when it comes to that.
Do you fish the short coast chrome dip 360s?
Yeah, they're great.
I love them.
Cameron loves them.
There's so much flash in the water when you first put that down.
Yeah, they're about as good as it gets for chrome flashers. He's hit the nail on the head for sure. Sometimes I bounce back and forth. Sometimes if I'm in big, heavy flow, my rods are just dragging so hard with the two fin compared to the one fin. So for me, it's just very situational. But regardless, if you have one fin on the back of your flasher, it's going to catch less water than if you have two. So if I need to, if the current's really burning and I'm trying to get my stuff down there, instead of maybe having to go to 75, I could go to 65. And for me, the less line out is the less tangles, the less, I can just control my stuff better with 6 rods out if I don't have to put that much line out. But for sure, those chrome dip flashers catch it. They throw off probably more light than any other chrome flasher on the market. And we kind of believe that fish think that these are fish, especially watching them on our lives. A lot of times I'm watching them and they're swimming right next to my flasher, and I want them to be back here behind my flasher, and they're just swimming.
Speed up.
Yeah, speed up. So I mean, you'll try it all, but sometimes they're just like, hey, found a buddy, or they think they're in a school of salmon swimming along. It's really weird. But so yeah, I think that's why we like chrome so much. Is I just think that they equivalent that to their buddies or what they saw in the ocean.
It's pretty amazing. They'll come from a distance to check that stuff out.
I think they
You'd be
feel it.
surprised.
I think they feel it because I've had them come 20, 25 feet when I was talking about the incoming tide thing in the morning, and I have my gear all the way up at 20, and I'm in 50 feet of water. I've watched salmon come straight up, and it wasn't like they were just coming to check the boat out. I'm watching a certain rod, and that thing beelines for that rod like a heat-seeking missile. And I know that the Columbia is only 6 feet of his, so he didn't see it from 25 feet away. I think their lateral lines, they can feel all that going on, and somehow they feel like they're missing out on something. That's why I say you do not have to be right down there with them. And if you get them to come up, when you see them coming from underneath your gear like that, it's almost always a bite. If you see them going down, or when you look and you see them and they're just level with you, for some reason they're not as aggressive. But if you're right above them and you watch them come from underneath, it's almost like they come in and they just do what you want them to do.
Suicidal.
Yep. On a mission.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? I think we covered it.
Real quick.
Go all day.
Yeah. Do you ever run hoochies or fish scopes?
Yes.
Do you find a difference? Do you find when?
Especially at Astoria,
Okay.
I do. And
With-
With the spin.
In that story, you're with the hoochie.
with the hoochie, yeah.
I like them up here too.
Probably majority, honestly, of my rods will have a hoochie on them in Astoria. Just the pink one, and I don't know if it's just a little more color or what it is down there. And then I'll come back up here and I'll have 20, leaders tied from down there when I'm making my transition, and I'll run them up here too. But I never noticed a difference compared to the ones that I just tied with no hoochie up here or not. But I smashed them up here with hoochies on. And I just put above my treble hook, I'll have like one 5mm bead or 6mm, and I'll shove that up into the head of the hoochie, and that just kind of holds it straight, and then I'll slide the hoochie down on top of my treble, and that just kind of makes it run true. Instead of just sliding the hoochie down on top of your hook, then with your egg loop, it might be kinked a little bit or whatever. But if you have one bead above it and give that little bit of spacing, it seems to hold it a little bit more center. But P-Line makes them, and then the other one that I really like is like, what is that, like Yakushiba or
Yeah.
yeah.
Gold Star makes them too.
Yeah, they're a little thinner up towards the head, like where the line goes through. It's real narrow, and it's a little bit different color. It's a little bit different pink. It seems like a little darker pink, but definitely at the coast I'm running Hoochie's. Gold Star also makes one that is like a flashing. It's not like a rubber. It's like a tinsel. And I will mix some of those tinsel in instead of just like a rubber pink Gucci. It has some silver flash and also some pink in it. Pretty much all my 3.5 spinners at Bouy 10 are probably gonna have something like that on them.
P-Line makes a tinsel insert as well.
Yeah.
That works really well. It's small.
Yep.
You can put your hoochie right over the top of it for a good
And
combo.
Yeah, P-Line makes good ones. even the Silver Horde or even these saltwater ones that I'm buying, I cut them way down until the tinsel is about at the bottom of my top treble hook. I don't have it like a big streamer fly. I just cut them all down until it's about at the bottom of my top treble hook. So my bottom treble hook is pretty much all the way exposed. And I don't know if that's a thing down there or not, but that's what we're all running on our 3.5s. We're gonna have Gucci's on there.
Okay, Bouy 10 launching out at Oahu, is it a daylight thing no matter what, or is it a tide thing?
Tide thing.
So if the tide's 9 o'clock in the morning, you sleep in?
Yep. There's lots of days on minus outgoes because there's so much water moving down there. I bet you I'm only down there 3 weeks. There's probably 6 days that I start at 10 out of 21. If you look at your graph and it's low at 8 o'clock and it's a minus, 1 point whatever, you're not going fishing anywhere out there. Period.
Because it's ripping so hard?
8 miles an hour, yeah. People will go out there and drop them in. I just don't think that they know. And maybe you could sneak in at the bottom of the checkerboard and get behind some sand in 20 feet of water and maybe catch one. But it is 100% all tidal down there. It's all tidal on where I start. If it's low, go low. If it's high, go high is the easiest, simplest recommendation. If it's low tide, I'm probably going to be somewhere from Ilwaco to Chinook, marker 5, marker 1, Bouy 20, 22 on the Oregon side. Could be all the way out at Bouy 10 if there's been a bunch of fish flushing in. That's at low tide. And then I'm going to follow the fish all the way up the rest of the day with the incoming tide. I'll just let the water, if I get in the fish, I'll just let the water start pushing me back and hopefully I stay in them. If I don't, if I feel like a few hundred fish just flushed through me and we just had a great bite and I'm not getting any more, I'll run back up to the fort or the church, or if I'm on the Oregon side, it's like Hammond, Astoria Bridge. I'm just trying to get back in front of those fish all day, and usually by high tide, I'll be up above the bridge on either side, whether it's the ship anchorage or it's the humps or the rest area on the Washington side. By high tide, we're all the way up there. The water turns around, starts flushing towards the ocean, and then we follow them right back down. But if it's low tide, go low, high tide, go high is what we do. And if it's a minus outgo in the morning, if you can dodge it, dodge it. Even if it's 7 a.m., any minus down there on my graph, I'm not going.
you bail when it gets ugly?
Yeah.
The wind blowing?
Yeah. I get back closer to home for sure. Yeah. And that's the bummer about launching. That's why you shouldn't launch in Owaka or Chinook, in my opinion. If you can launch and just do like East Basin, Astoria, or even Warrenton, or just something in the middle of the fishery, at least you can almost always come back up and fish around the bridge and then idle your way in. But if you get stuck in a bite up, high tide, you got up above the bridge, now all of a sudden the water starts going out and it's blowing, and you got to get all the way back down to Ilwaco or Chinook, you got a day ahead of you.
You're gonna get beat.
You're gonna get beat up.
You gotta plan on running into the wind when you run down.
Yep.
Even deep rivers not a bad way to go if you want to fish a little later in the day if the tides are later.
Anything.
I've done deep river before. It's a little longer run, but if it's a late tide, it works pretty good.
Yeah, anything from the bridge up, and honestly, as close as you can get to the bridge. I'm moored right there at West Mooring, so it's nice because sometimes I'll just get beat up coming across the river, but it's kind of right there in the middle. But those lower launches, you just better know, what the tide's doing and where you're at, because if that tide turns around and it's blowing, later in the day, and you have to get all the way back down there, and it's gonna be a long journey.
So in the minus tide thing, if it's a minus tide, you're gonna wait for it to slack.
Yep.
At least, before you start fishing.
Yep, and I'll probably know on a minus tide that it's gonna run out an hour after low. So if it's low at 7, I'll probably start at 8. Plan on being lines in between 8 and 8:30. But yeah, I don't go out there. That's a headache. Trying to get gear down, and there's usually just so many fish, and I might as well just fish when I can catch them. Everybody good? Okay.
Thank you.
Wrap it up. Yeah.
I ran my boat up, we lift